The Egyptians living on the bank of the Nile 45,000 years ago called Ra, the god of the sun. Ra was the most powerful god, responsible for taking the ages from darkness to light. So one day, Ra left his throne and carrying a lit lamp, began to float in the skies on a boat. Light spread all over wherever Ra moved, and in the evening, Ra, on its flying boat, reached the seashores in the west and plunged into the water. Deep inside the sea, Ra had a long battle with the darkness. The Roman civilization succeeded the Egyptians. Since the Romans were a bit ahead of the Egyptians, their account was also ahead of theirs. Modern to the extent that the Roman god of the sun, Helios, traveled on a 4-horse chariot instead of a boat from the east to the west. The world had a night when it stayed at a palace for rest in the west. The Egyptian civilization is 4,000-year-old, and that of the Romans 2,000-year-old. Therefore, the tale of the sun at present is much older than that of the Egyptians and the Romans. And our account of the sun does not include fascinating tales and fables. It has been written on the basis of observations and experiments. The horse pulling the chariot of Helios was a fantasy. But in 1976, an actual Helios had already been sent to the sun. It is not one but two Helios, Helios 1 and Helios 2. Their launch was a joint venture between the United States and Germany. They were the fastest space machines ever made by man at that time. Helios 2 ran at a pace of 70 kilometers per second, which means it can take you from Lahore to Karachi in only 18 seconds. Why was this mission sent? And why did it become necessary to send the missions to the nearest star? Why has this need still persisted? At a time when man has failed to eliminate poverty and hunger on Earth, why does he not regard his hobby of moving in the skies and conquering the sun as a waste of his time and money? The answer to it is the solar winds. Look here and listen to the sound. It is the sound of the sun. This process continues on the surface of the sun all the time. In this process, storms appear to rise in the outer layer of the sun. These storms are, in fact, highly charged particles. These storms produce so many huge circles, equal to the size of many Earths. These powerful particles come from being in the center of the sun. They cross over the surface of the sun and enter space like massive storms. These stormy waves are called solar winds. The solar winds blow at a speed of 400 kilometers per second. The solar wind strikes against everything coming before it with full force. And our Earth also has to face this wind. The solar wind is so strong that it will end life and modern technology on Earth forever. But the solar wind is unable to do so. It is because of a magnetic field around the Earth. This magnetic field is generated at the center of the Earth. As soon as the solar winds reach near the Earth, the invisible magnetic field intercepts them. That is why these waves, winds, fail to cause much damage to the Earth. However, at times, when the solar winds grow too much in intensity, they factor in the loss. Like in 1981, when the solar winds were strong, they destroyed a hydroelectric grid in Canada. The same way the US satellite Galaxy 4 fell victim to the solar winds that threw it out of its space orbit in 1998, it halted the operation of 45 million pages, which may be called the cell phones of the present day. This incident also destroyed huge amounts of valuable data forever. The special suits astronauts wear and the coating on the space machine are aimed at guarding against solar winds. Therefore, maximum information about the solar winds is very essential. Like the websites to know about the weather conditions, internet sites are also available to know about the space weather, which means the arrival time, intensity, and count of the solar winds. The information on the solar winds helps communication, and the energy departments update their systems. Maximum information about the solar winds can make this system more effective, strong, and modern. So with this aim, Helios 1 and Helios 2 were sent around the Sun in 1974 and 1976, respectively. Helios 1, 10 years, and Helios 2, 3 years, performed on their respective missions. They were connected to the Earth last time in 1986 and 1980. Therefore, we don't know which state they are in today. But most information about the solar winds, cosmic rays, and magnetic field of the Sun is due to Helios 1 and 2. In order to obtain information, Helios 2 went so close to the Sun that it was only 434 million km away from it. A saying goes that ignorance grows side by side with knowledge. So Helios 1 and Helios 2 answered many queries, but they also generated new questions at the same time. One question was, how do the solar winds take place? Secondly, how and why comes such a huge change in the conditions on the surface of the Sun? It was necessary to know how the solar winds affect human life and the technology on Earth, so that we could take guard against them. To get an answer to these questions, we needed to go much closer to the Sun than Helios 1 and 2. This stick-holding, weak old man is 91 years of age. He is scientist Eugene Parker. Parker is standing before the Sun at the time this video is being uploaded. The Parker Solar Probe mission was named after this scientist. The probe is far faster than the Helios spacecraft at its peak, so fast that you need only 7 seconds to reach Karachi from Lahore. This probe was sent to the Sun on August 12, 2018. It was the first mission named after a living person, Eugene Parker, because he had provided the theory of supersonic solar winds 65 years ago. The Parker Solar Probe has not only reached before the Sun, but also started the functions. This is the picture this probe sent to the Earth in December 2018. This was the nearest picture of the Sun at that time. The small bright dot on it is the planet Mercury. Compared to past missions, the Parker Solar Probe will go 7 times closer to the Sun. Moving on its oblong orbit, it will be only 6.1 million kilometers away from the Sun at the nearest point. But right now, it has entered the atmosphere of the Sun. In this part of the Sun, which is called corona, we can call it the crown or crest of the Sun. Interestingly, the corona, which is above the surface of the Sun, is many times hotter than the surface. The surface of the Sun is around 56-66 degrees Celsius, while the temperature at the corona is as high as 1.7 million. It is more than 300 times. Why is it so? The Parker probe will also find an answer to it. Just stop here and think about how a man-made machine would survive at the exorbitant temperature of the Sun. The answer is TPS, which means Thermal Protection System. The part of the probe facing the Sun has a 4.5-inch thick white sheet. The sheet has been specially prepared by carbon-carbon composite in a way to reflect the maximum heat. By doing so, the rear part of the spacecraft will remain normal. In order to keep the instruments in the rear part cool, pipes with water rotating therein have been fitted. But even then, leaving aside carbon, anything can melt in seconds at 1.7 million degc. The point is when the probe will be nearest to the Sun at a distance of 6.1 kilometers, and the 7 million watts of heat will come from the particles that are spread in this part. But these particles are remotely spread, while the usual temperature in this part is from 1300 to 1400 degc. The Parker Solar Probe is sustaining this temperature by virtue of its excellent design. Rather, the camera and the sensor are also working perfectly. If things remained normal, the probe would continue to conduct experiments like this for 7 years. The Parker probe will take 24 rounds of the Sun in 7 years, and then end itself by plunging into the Sun. A part of the Sun will be mapped in detail with pictures sent by the probe, but this mapping will not be easy, because the Sun is too much huge in size. So huge that 100 Earths set in a row will constitute only its diameter. The Sun is so large that 1 million Earths can be accommodated therein. So huge that if all the planets in the solar system were put in the Sun 600 times, the room would be left out. The Sun is so heavy that it carries over 98% of the weight of the entire solar system. That is why the Sun has a magnetic force proportionate to its mass. Due to this intense force, 8 planets, dozens of small planets, 170 moons, and countless meteorites over the course of billions of years have been held by the Sun around its orbit. Our Sun has been shining over the last 4 billion years and is likely to pass through the same time in the future. But the question is, where does it get its shine? How has the Sun been emitting light over the last 4 billion years? The answer is nuclear fusion, which means explosions of hydrogen bombs on its surface. The Sun, in fact, is a huge ball of gases wherein hydrogen is the maximum, some helium, and other elements in a very small quantity. Now the question is, how does it shine? A high intensity of gravitational force in the center of the sun brings the protons, the charged atoms, of the hydrogen so close that they stick together. As thought, they fall in love with each other. The protons of hydrogen combine to generate a new atom, helium. But the particle of helium is much lighter than the hydrogen atoms that had struck together to form it. And if it is lighter than the atoms it has been composed of, where is the rest of the mass? The answer is that it has gone to Einstein. Yes, according to the famous equation of Einstein, E equals mc square. The mass converts into energy. This particle of energy is called a photon. Inside the center of the sun, the crazy photons continue to move around and strike against one another. Photons take tens of thousands of years to come up to the surface of the sun. But once they appear on the surface, they take only 8-20 minutes to reach our Earth. This amount of time is the same you spend watching the spicy headlines of news on the TV set. So next time you see anything in the sunlight, or are doing it at the moment, you must recall that this guest of the light, photon, had resulted from the explosions of the hydrogen bombs. Its name is photon, which has come from millions of kilometers away with lots of effort. It is even more interesting that this particle of light came into being thousands of years ago. It is very valuable, as it also holds a secret. And the secret is that it, the photon, provides the cheapest and most endless source of energy to our Earth. Generally, everyone knows about solar energy. But do you know that a fanatic 78 years ago, in 1941, had the idea of producing solar energy by means of putting a sheet before the sun? He was the American biochemist Isaac Asimov. According to his idea, if we have to produce electricity with sunlight, we can do it in the daytime only. And that too before the sun only. And the system for producing electricity will not work amid the clouds and rains at night. That means the system will be unable to produce electricity. It is true that the more solar panels are installed, the more electricity they will produce, but they will also cover the space accordingly. So why not address this problem by capturing the sunlight in space before it reaches the Earth? Because the space is free of clouds and rain, and also does not have dust storms. The installation of panels in the space will also overcome the shortage of ground on Earth. In routine, the sun always shines in space and never sets down. The rising and setting of the sun are on account of the rotation of the Earth on axis and our human feelings. As to the sun, it has always been there and will remain there. The sun does not rise or set. The tail of sunrise and sunset ends some kilometers above the Earth. So the idea was to arrange huge solar panels as a sheet in the space. It would convert the sunlight into energy, and then, through a laser beam or microwave, it would be sent to a central power station on the Earth. Then, through the cables, the electricity is transmitted to the required places. The space is without clouds and rain, nor does the sun set therein. It is interesting to note that China is going to do the same. China has launched the Solar Power Space Project. China has planned to set up the Pino project 36,000 kilometers above the Earth. If things remain the same, China will begin to get electricity from the first space power station in 2040. Solar energy is also necessary to avoid using coal and oil as fuels. They are adding to the destruction of our blue land with every passing day, because the Earth is getting warmer from their use as fuel. The reservoirs of clean water, meaning the ice on the mountains, are melting fast and draining out to the seas. Do you know that the sun and the Earth were like fire in the beginning? They were the fireballs. If the Earth was a fireball, then where did the mountain ice and the water come from after it cooled down? The answer is the meteorite passing near the sun. It is also called the comet or the tail star. This and billions of other revolving rocks of various sizes are attracted by the sun and fall into it. These meteorites containing frozen water also fall on other planets. It is hard, solid ice. So when they move towards the sun, the ice melts due to heat and speed and spreads wide in space. From a distance, it appears to be the tail of a planet, and many people take it for a falling star. So whatever is wished for will be met. We are not certain about the wish. But when these meteorites hit the Earth or any other planet, the ice present therein causes water on that planet. A strong belief goes that when the hot Earth was becoming cool, the rain of meteorites had brought water to it. From the clouds to the seas and lakes, all water came to the Earth through the meteorites. The red planet behind this comet is Mars. Mars is where man intends to set up a colony. It goes about Mars as having sown the seed of life on Earth. The complete story of the plan for human settlement on Mars and the search for life on this planet will be shown to you in the next episode of Universe.